Hey everyone, Chris here, and today I want to talk about Warface for the Nintendo Switch. Hey, if you're enjoying the video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Be sure to click that subscribe button so you'll know when more content is on the way. So, in my mind, one thing that the Switch has really been lacking is a Call of Duty style first-person shooter multiplayer game, or at least one that works well and kind of mimics that semi-realistic, not really over-the-top type of gameplay. Sure, there have been some good first-person shooters, even with multiplayer components like Doom. Wolfenstein, of course, is on the system, but again, there hasn't really been anything that has sort of that COD style. Enter Warface, a free-to-play game that, if memory serves, is several years old, is being ported over from where it originally showed up, which I think was on the Xbox 360, even though I think it may still be available on things like the Xbox One and the PS4. And so this is, again, a free-to-play game where you can, to your heart's desire, spend money on credits, which is spelled here with a K, like Mortal Kombat, and I'm not sure why they decided to do that, to get things like skins and costumes and different types of weapons that you can use for certain periods of time during the different multiplayer modes that are available. I have a few complaints about this game, but I'll preface all of that by saying that I think it is actually pretty good to genuinely good, if we're looking at sort of a rating scale here. You know, because there isn't that COD style of game on the Switch, this sort of fills that need in a significant way. In fact, even though I do have a lot of issues with this game, I think it's, you know, in a lot of ways really unpolished and could have been much better in terms of graphical presentation, UI, menu implementation, that kind of stuff. I do find myself coming back to it time and again because it is one of those things that you can pick up and play for, you know, a couple of matches at a time to kind of scratch that itch of having a solid first-person shooter on the Nintendo Switch. So again, you know, I do think that the menus in this game are pretty much atrocious. They're not the most user-friendly. It's a little bit hard to tell whether or not, you know, if you spend money on a certain item, you know, how you sort of navigate sort of the equipping it process. It tries to make it easier with some components than others, but I found it to be really sort of a tedious thing to navigate the menus. And part of that may, you know, have to do with playing it on the Switch itself, which, you know, if you're in handheld mode, it's got a small screen. It can be hard to read smaller font and text as you're trying to navigate all of that. So that creates a little bit of an issue too. The other big thing that I think that this is sorely lacking in, and it's not, you know, a huge distraction to the point of, you know, I can't even play this game, but graphically it feels really unrefined. Now, you know, clearly the producers and developers of this game aren't going to be on the same level maybe of somebody like Bethesda and sort of work with partners to try and get this as refined as it could be, but you know, knowing what's possible on the Switch and seeing what can happen with other first-person shooters, it is a bit of a disappointment that it looks as, at times, muddy and as sort of just not all that polished as it might otherwise. You know, some maps look good, actually, for the most part. There is a hangar map, for example, with a lot of cargo crates that you can play in for Team Deathmatch and I guess you'd call it King of the Hill, or those types of matches where you're trying to claim certain territories. That actually looks pretty good, and it's not at all distracting. And playing it, you get sort of immersed in the gameplay itself and really tend to enjoy it once you get into it. But then there's one level that I can recall where you're playing in sort of an airfield where all of these RVs are parked oddly. And because there's not a campaign or a single-player story to this, you're not entirely sure, you know, what the backdrop for all of this is or why we're playing in these locations, but that's neither here nor there. But in that airfield, there are moments where planes are taking off and they're sort of aiming for this dust effect, you know, dust being kicked up by the taking off of the airplanes, and so it makes it a little bit hazy and maybe adds sort of a gameplay element there where you can't see your enemies who may be right in front of you. But it really just looks like a yellow fog. It almost looks like mustard gas was dropped on the battlefield in those situations, and it just doesn't really work all that well. It doesn't look very good. It just looks murky and hazy and not pretty to look at. Now, you know, whether or not all these shortcomings have to do with the limitations of the Switch hardware could be debated, I think. But again, when you look at what other developers have been able to do on the Switch, I think, in my mind, there's not really an excuse to sort of let this be ignored. However, as I said earlier, this is a free-to-play game, so it's kind of hard to complain about it because I have been able to play it so far without dropping a single penny into it. How long I'll go without spending any money on it is anybody's guess. If I keep playing it, I think I will toss a coin to the developer just to kind of acknowledge what they've been able to do to fill that little bit of need with something like Battlefield or Call of Duty on Switch. But it could look much better than it does. All of that said, right, to kind of revisit this kind of central idea, this is a pretty good game. I actually am going to give it a score of 7 out of 10 because the gameplay feels nice. It's mostly fluid. It's not running at 60 frames per second at all. You know, mostly 30 frames per second. Depending on your internet connection, there may be a little bit of lag from time to time, but mostly it's smooth. I haven't really had many issues at all with that. And I've seen that it does actually have voice chat integration, though the maps that I've played on so far, and I guess the servers that I've been in haven't really allowed for that, so I'm not sure what that'll look like in the future. I know there was a patch that just came out because when I went to play it the other day, the game updated, so I don't know exactly what that was. I haven't had a chance to look it up yet, but I'm hoping that the developers stick with this and keep updating it because it does fill that gap. And I'm still kind of confused as to why something like Call of Duty Mobile can't be on the Switch, because I think it would do really well, and I love Call of Duty Mobile. It's the only mobile game that I play with any kind of consistency, really. And I wish it were on the Switch. But because we don't have that, we have Warface. And for what it is, it works. Again, despite the shortcomings, I find myself coming back to it over and over again, and I'll be curious to see in the coming months, if I keep doing that. And if I do, I think that'll be a testament to how successful the developers have been in bringing this over, despite the shortcomings, which again, hopefully they'll develop as things unfold in the future. So anyway, that's my thoughts on Warface. If you've played this game, let me know what you think. Do you have the same experience? Am I overlooking anything? Do you think it fills that need that a lot of people want and have for a Call of Duty style game on the Switch? As always, again, thanks for watching. If you haven't already done so, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, and I appreciate your feedback.